Pregame.com.
Welcome back to Pregame.tv. I'm your host, Marco D'Angelo. He's Ken Thomson, SportsX Radio here in Las Vegas. And Bryan Leonard, this is going to be Bryan's free pick. We're going to take a look at Friday night NBA action. The Portland Trailblazers travel to play the Indiana Pacers. Now, guys, Indiana, they're getting it done this year. And I know they had a couple games here where they didn't play so well, but this is a team that from the start of this season has played extremely well. Looks like they're ready to make that next jump. The last 2 years they've given Miami some, made them work to advance, but this might be the year for them. And what I like about Indiana, they play some tough defense. And I think if somehow they can get past Miami, when they play the teams in the West, which have a tendency to be more of finesse teams and play, up-tempo scoring, their style of basketball can frustrate a lot of these Western teams.
Yeah, and of course getting Bynum, which hopefully he'll be in the mix. I talked to my buddy Jay Query, who works WNDE in Indianapolis, said if they can get 11 to 12, 13 minutes out of him to back up, give Hibbert some rest during the postseason, that'll be key. Plus, they kept him away from a team like Miami, a team that they're going to have to compete with, and a team that if they do get that home court advantage, that Game 7 would be huge in Indianapolis.
And it's a good point you made about just basically you've got Indiana and Miami coming out of the East, unless we see major upsets. In the West, there's a lot of good basketball teams, and those teams all season long have been beating up on each other. Once you get to the playoffs, they'll be beating up on each other. By the time they get to the finals, take a look at Indiana and Miami. They basically have a cakewalk to the championship. Now, anything can happen, but they only have one tough opponent to play against. Everybody in the West is going to be facing tough teams all the way through, and that could really hurt these teams come the end of the season after playing 100 games.
I agree.
Well, you look at Portland, and this is a team that we thought was going to be a little bit better this year. I didn't see this coming. Did any of you guys see what Portland's doing coming?
Portland had all the tools to get there. It was just they had never done it before. A lot of guys on a day-to-day basis, one day they're really good, the next day they slip back. You see that a lot of the younger teams, but they put it all together so far this season, and they just came out and made believers out of everybody early on. Now as the season's going on, they're starting to struggle a little bit. Maybe the teams are getting used to what they're playing. Maybe they're just feeling the fatigue of going out and trying to prove themselves every single night. We see it with the major teams, San Antonio, Miami. Every once in a while they'll take a day off. Indiana this year, lately they've taken some games off. Maybe Portland is to the point now that they just need to take a step back every once in a while and realize they don't have to go out and prove themselves every single night.
That's the thing. When they go on these road trips, like on this extended road trip here, they're just going to try and get 500 on that road trip. They were fortunate. They went in and took out my Knicks last night, which was no surprise. But Indiana's a different animal. You go there, it's a lot different than going to the Garden.
Now, talking about Portland and how they've lost some games. But if you look at the teams they played a 4-game road trip that was an absolute nightmare of a road trip. I call it, the Texas death trap. They had to play San Antonio, Dallas, Houston, and after you finish those 3 games going through the state of Texas, they got to get Oklahoma City on the end of that 4-game road trip. They're playing good ball clubs that, it caught up to them where, again, the teams in the East, it's almost every night when you're playing in your conference, it's a breather. You don't have those breathers in the West, and they just had, I think, a bad stretch scheduling-wise and caught some good teams and some teams that were playing very hot at the right time. They played Memphis in there, and Memphis was playing, good ball for a 2-week period. Golden State's been hot and cold this year. So I'm not so concerned about Portland. This slide, I just think it's part of the schedule.
It could be, and when a team starts off as well as Portland does, teams don't take them for granted like they had in the past. Before, you knew Portland was a middle-of-the-road team that was a pretty good team, but if you gave your best effort, you were going to beat them. The way Portland started the season, coming out and proving they're a team you need to reckon with, teams are going to circle that game on the schedule. Yeah,
LaMarcus Aldridge can't play at a higher level than he has this season, no doubt.
Absolutely, and definitely, a candidate, in the running for MVP, which right now belongs to Kevin Durant, in my opinion. But this is your free pick, Bryan. Let's make it official.
All right, I'm big on revenge when two of the heavyweights in the NBA get together, and I think Portland's one of those teams this year. You take a look, Portland won against Indiana in Portland earlier this year at 106-102. Last 5 games for Portland, they've only won 2 of those games. Both those games they struggled to win by 3 and 4 points. Offense has been the problem with the Blazers lately. In 4 of the last 5 games, they scored 94, 90, 81, and 88 points. This isn't a team playing very well right now. Now they're going against a team that plays pretty much the best defense in the NBA. It's also the 3rd game of a 4-game road trip right here for Portland. They got Minnesota tomorrow, and that's a much easier game for them to win. I just talked about teams taking days off, taking games off. This could be a situation with Portland here where that gets done. Indiana, they've taken a step back, as Marco pointed out, sometimes this season. But you go back, they've won 18 of their last 23 games. Now they're back to starting to play better again. There's no look ahead here for them as they have Orlando coming up on Sunday. And in revenge games, in-season revenge, Indiana's 2-0 straight up, 101 against the spread. Obviously, small sample size. Indiana hasn't lost a lot this year. But I like this Indiana team. The line is pretty cheap in my regard, 5.5 or 6. A nice revenge game here for them. I'll play the Pacers.
All right, there you have it from Bryan. He says to take the Indiana Pacers Friday night over Portland. That's going to wrap up our free pick videos for this week. Or excuse me, I should say we're coming back Saturday. We've got college basketball, South Dakota at Denver here on pregame.tv.